Faith, Reid. Your fearful guest. Your fearful guest, Faith, Reid.
Thank you. Madam Contest Master, Toastmasters and guests, we've all heard that the fear of speaking in public is worse than the fear of death for many. And many seek out organizations like Toastmasters to help them overcome that fear. But have you ever wondered what goes on in the mind of a first-time guest to a Toastmasters meeting? And have you ever considered the effect of the Toastmasters meeting on that fearful guest? Well, given that fact, I'm going to tell you a story about a young lady and her visit to a Toastmasters meeting for the first time. And we'll go inside her mind and the effect that the Toastmasters meeting had on her. Her name is Susan. Susan is scared to death to speak in public. A friend suggests Toastmasters, so she does the research, finds a chapter, a meeting close to her, and she shows up one Saturday morning. That fear grips her as she walks through the door and tells her, "You better turn around and leave now." But before that can happen, someone takes her by the hand, you know how we do it, puts her in a seat. There's someone at the front of the room. The meeting is about to start. So she settles in her seat and says to herself, "How bad can this be?" There's someone at the lectern announcing how many speakers are going to be on the program and how much time these speakers will have. 5 to 7 minutes? That's an eternity. Susan knows there is no way she could stand and speak for 5 to 7 minutes. And then it gets interesting. A joke master? I like this. I wonder if they have a class for that. See, Susan thinks she's funny. Soon, a young speaker is making her way to the front of the room. You see, it's time for her to give her icebreaker speech. Susan can detect the fear in her eyes. The young speaker goes somewhat comfortably through her speech, and she finishes. She gets a rousing applause. And Susan says to herself, "Could I ever do that? Could I ever overcome my fear and stand in front of a room of strangers and speak for 7 minutes?" And then she notices something unique that happens. Every speaker to the front of the room shakes hands before they speak. And she says to herself, "Aha, that must be the trick to overcoming the fear." The meeting goes on, and Susan is beginning to feel that maybe this was a good idea. She's glad she stayed. When the topics master announces that he's going to call on some members in the audience and a guest to respond to some questions, and they'll have 2 minutes at the lectern to respond. Susan retreats in her seat. That old fear rises up in her again, and then it happens. She hears her name. Timidly, she looks around the room, and everybody is looking back at her. And now, they're clapping. So slowly, she rises from her seat, makes her way to the front of the room, does the hand trick thing, wishing it to be the trick to help her overcome her fear. Slowly, she faces the audience. She grips the lectern. She looks over at the door. It's so close. She looks over at the light box, wishing the green light to come on. Nothing happens. So she opens her mouth and begins to speak. Words flow out of her. She has to fight to keep from tripping over her tongue. She keeps speaking, and the red light comes on. Her heart is pounding so hard when she goes back to her seat. And she's saying to herself, the realization just hit her. I just spoke in front of a room of strangers for 2 minutes and survived. I can do this! I can do this! She keeps pounding her thighs as she tries to calm herself down. I can do this. Wow, I can do this. Soon it comes to the end of the meeting, and the Toastmaster asks for all the guests to stand and say their names and why they came. Susan stands and apologizes for the mess she made of the topic question. She explains that she's scared to death and fearful of speaking in public. And she asks the group to allow her to come back as a member and not as a guest. Toastmasters, each one of you knows someone like Susan. Why don't you invite them to come with you to the next Toastmasters meeting? You see, they could leave like Susan did. Fearless, Madame Contest Master.